Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. And I have to say, I got here really, really early, and there are so many friends and colleagues in the audience, and I just want to say I hope that this day comes up with something strong, because you have all the people here who you need. So I wanted to really start with some opening remarks by making two very individual observations. So the first is that the media of my childhood was a collective affair. What I saw at home, the Waltons, Crackerjack, Top of the Pops, Tomorrow's World, was picked over in the playground. And on sleepovers, we would practice our American accents by shouting out, good night, Mary Ellen, good night, John Boy. And on any given day, if we happen to be in a group at 5 to 5, we go 5 to 5, it's Crackerjack. And our vision of the future was built on the steps, on the building blocks that Raymond Baxter conjured up. And also, that's how I learned to dance with my friends in front of the mirror to whatever was top of the pops that day. Now, I don't actually say this as someone who was an avid TV watcher. On the contrary, I was a bit I was head in the book kind of person. I'm also not particularly nostalgic about my own childhood. There was a load of things that could have gone better. But what I really want to say by opening the conference with this thought is that it was access to a collective experience rather than the actual content itself that created the culture of my youth. The value lay not just in what we watched, but in the fact that we watched it at the same time or separately, but together, experienced it together. And that is a point that I want to hold on to this morning. Culture was not simply delivered to us. It was something we made together out of the same raw material. And even those who only half watched something were in the conversation, because the programs were prompts for social interaction. They were not destinations in themselves. Now, my second observation is actually about Cocomelon, which is watched by hundreds of millions of children and regularly tops Netflix and YouTube's most watched programs of any kind. And I first came across Cocomelon when it was subject to an expose in The New Yorker that claimed that as part of the editing process, children were put in front of the screen, and at any point that the child looked away, they re-edited, ensuring the final project was mesmerizing. Now, the makers insisted that was not true, but whistleblowers who talked to the journalist in question, and I have actually since talked to the journalist in question, said that also the episodes that featured black children were longer in length because they tended to come from lower socioeconomic families with less childcare, and the longer length was useful to the parents. So I really want to be clear, the detail is contested, but the scale of engagement is not. Children spend billions of hours watching Cocomelon all across the world. And it's important to note that it's not the subject matter that is inherently difficult for children, but it's rapid visuals and non-stop sensory input designed to be deliberately compelling, which is unsuitable for a developing mind. It affects attention span, focus, speech, emotional balance in toddlers, especially those who spend long periods of unsupervised watching. And it's also notable how many of Cocomelon's target audience falls between 12 and 24 months. And again, I want to be clear, I'm not looking for a scapegoat in the form of a single cartoon, but I'm offering it as an illustration of a system in which success is measured by retention, repetition, and scale, not by what a child understands, imagines, or later shares with another child. And taken together, these two examples describe the profound shift from media that children experience together to a media that is individually delivered and commercially optimized to hold user attention. That shift from shared culture to targeted consumption is fundamental to everything that you discuss today. And I make these 2 points at the outset because when we talk about harms of the online world, when we reach for solutions, it's easy to focus on content. But more content delivered in places designed to addict is not an answer. And I would contend that both the problems and the solutions lie in a broader context, the context of the child and the context in which the content is created. We've spent years asking, what are children watching, when we should also be asking, for what reason is it designed to be watched, with whom, to what end? And if that is the shift, then we have to ask what has driven it. And I would say there are two enormous pressures shaping what children now consume. The first is that shift to radical individualization, variously named personalization, on-demand, individual learning, tailored, reflecting the user interests. Whether at home or at school, whether for entertainment or learning, there is a pressure, or even worse, there is a promise that each child will be treated separately. Personalization is not without value. It can support children with different needs, different paces of learning, different interests. Nor is all digital play isolating. Some of it is creative and social. But the overwhelming majority is not. The question is not whether technology belongs in childhood, but whether it has been designed with childhood in mind. And design, and not technology itself, is where the responsibility sits, because this individualization carries with it an opportunity cost. Not sharing culture, not sharing learning, not experiencing the consumption of both entertainment and learning, where everything from embarrassment to support, courage to humor, or even dance moves are shared. Children do not only develop cognitively, they develop socially by negotiating and creating meaning together, laughing at the same joke, being confused at the same moment, copying, arguing, collaborating. Shared cultural reference points are how children learn not just language, but belonging. And I point to the catastrophic sense of loneliness of a generation brought up in this personalized world. When every child's feed is different, those moments of shared negotiation are eroded. The other pressure that media now sits in is now that media sits inside a digital economy based on capturing attention, which again, in many social and educational areas of children's lives, holds their attention at the cost of the rest of their development needs, emotional, social, intellectual, and even the freedom to do nothing or to think for yourself. This is not accidental. We've allowed the tech sector to build an economy in which the most successful products are those that are hardest to put down. But a product optimized to hold attention is not the same as an experience designed for childhood. Childhood requires pauses, boredom, reflection, and the opportunity to turn away. So if the problems are contextual, the solutions must be too. And the first session is ban or build better. And the real question is simply not ban, block, or how much time, but what the time is spent consuming? What is it doing in a child's life? Is it replacing interaction or provoking it? Is it closing down imagination or opening it up? Not simply what children consume, but the purposes for which it is designed, the context in which it is consumed, and the people with whom it is shared. Because even if we ban some of it, there are no suggestions on the table currently to ban Cocomelon. And while I'm a passionate believer in free play on and offline, there is no unified support for a whole-scale change in provision for the spaces and places in which free play can happen, online or off. If all your friends are online gaming and there is no version of going out to play in the real world, then gaming actually does become the best choice for any individual child. So the task before us is not to rewind history, but to design forward, to ask what a healthy digital childhood would look like if we were inventing it from scratch today. And for me, building back better starts with acknowledging the need of children to do many things, including things that have nothing to do with media, even doing nothing at all. It may not be the most sympathetic room for me to say this in, but depending on age, a cardboard box, a wall and a spray can, a dressing up box, even staring at the ceiling in a teenage grump may indeed be the best thing that a child could be doing. In other words, creativity is as much about self-direction as it is about consumption of good media. And in other words, creativity is rarely about optimizing your time. And that is why this matters. Now, equally, I think any of my friends in the audience will know that I believe we should be tougher about the design of media itself. For example, why are we not age-rating addictive loops and persuasive design, which may indeed put Cocomelon out of the range of the very children it's designed for, but no toddler should be left alone in a loop of attention-seeking material, whatever the content. Companies that expose children to danger or exploit them commercially should not be allowed to have them as customers. And even though that sounds like a ban, it's not. It's a condition of entry to a child's life. And more excitingly, we could imagine a media deliberately structured for co-viewing so that children can share culture as we do great sports events, digital equivalents of a film club or a youth centre where sharing is the point, with natural stopping points, prompts for discussion and design that assumes or even requires the presence of another human being. The point is, we should measure success not only in clicks and time spent, but in conversations, random outcomes, and well-being. And I think that is where the institutions, particularly public service media, still have a unique role to play. And if I were magically given the role of determining the future of the BBC, I'm available, I would put content made for and by children at its heart, offer a non-advertising environment that people can actually use to communicate, and draw on its deep cultural and news history to create bespoke AI products that offer the latest technology in a forum designed with children in mind. In a personalised age, PBS media may mean creating some of the few remaining shared spaces, trusted, non-extractive environments where children are citizens rather than being used. And finally, the question of the social media ban itself. I've been working with colleagues in the Lords to make access to children conditional on providing a suitable service. In other words, don't ban the kids, but ban the companies from accessing them unless they offer safety by design, high privacy, and a duty of care. This is an active conversation, and we hope to bring all sides of the argument together to include children in the digital world on the precondition that they will be treated with respect. Access to childhood should be earned, not assumed. Now, I believe that my colleagues in the Lords will support this effort, and it will shape government thinking during their consultation that they announced. I'm not that happy about the consultation. It is one of 81 consultations this government has open, and I think we can do more, better, quicker. But the point of both sides of this argument, whether it's how we treat social media or how we reinvent media as a collective space, is that the goal is not a smaller world for children, but a richer one. A goal in which the world technology supports development rather than competes with it, where culture is once again something children make with one another, and where the digital environments they grow up in are shaped deliberately for childhood, not as an outcome of market incentives. Because ultimately, as Laura said, actually, in her introductory remarks, anything that is made can be made better. Thank you.